Hello and welcome to High Tech in the Heartland. I'm Bob Goff. This is Scott Richardson. We talk about tech in the Midwest and how it applies to us here locally. And Scott always likes to give us a little disclaimer off the top.
That's right. First, Bob, my disclaimer. I'm a patent attorney here in Quincy, and the mere fact that I make some remarks today doesn't mean that any attorney-client relationship is formed. And also, since I am an attorney, once in a while I talk about legal things. And I'm not giving any legal advice, because to give legal advice, you'd have to be my client, and I have to know your specific situation. And then finally, I work for Robinson Cole, an East Coast-based law firm, and I am not representing Robinson Cole's views in my remarks today. I'm just talking as a private citizen that's interested in high tech in the Heartland.
And we are going to talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain. And before I do that, we get these I get these inquiries from all over the world wanting us to advertise their crypto and Bitcoin stuff. And they pay us a small fee, and we run these articles with all this information. And we get a lot of these now, and we clearly label them as sponsored content, because at first we just put them in there like in the business section, and then we had some of our local banks and advertisers were like, hey, so we made sure they're all listed as sponsored content. So this kind of pertains to that in terms of what that all is about, because I don't know anything about it. I just run this stuff because they pay us to. I'm not endorsing that anybody should do it. I just say, hey, here's this information, because I've had people who said, hey, I got this crypto thing and it was a scam. Oh, okay, I didn't tell you. Like, that's my disclaimer. I didn't tell you to give them any money.
You didn't sell it.
I didn't sell it. I just put it on the site and clearly said it was an ad. I mean, you know, if you get an ad, you know, if you see our Little Jess ad on the sports site, go buy a car from them, or go buy a Jeep from them. That's great. We didn't tell you to. We hope you do, but we didn't tell you to.
Well, and later on we'll talk about the disadvantages and the dangers of cryptocurrency, and that's one of them. But really, the dangers and disadvantages aren't in the system itself. It's in how people use it, or how people, fraudulently use it. Anyway, before I talk about that, I should mention that the previous half a dozen or so topics we've talked about, I've kind of, I've had a long career. I was a patent examiner. Before that, I was a defense consultant, and I've been a patent attorney for 20-something years. And in doing all those jobs, I never really become an expert in any one area. I don't have PhD knowledge of any one topic, but I have the great opportunity to get within striking distance of being an expert and talking to experts and knowing just a little bit about. I know enough that I can talk about most of these topics at a dinner party. That's about the depth of my knowledge.
Jack of all trades, master of none?
Exactly.
There you go.
Master of none. Maybe a master of patent prosecution. That's probably the only thing I'm really.
That's your thing, right?
That's my thing. Yeah, but cryptocurrency is one thing that I don't even know if I could talk about it at dinner parties. I mean, I kind of missed the boat on this, Bob. I've never owned Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, and I've really been interested in the topic, but I just never really invested in it. I didn't get defrauded, obviously, but I didn't make anything either. Yeah. And I have friends who've made out like bandits on this, so I don't know why. I just missed the train. But anyway, before I talk about cryptocurrency, I wanted to mention something about currency. And I mean, most currencies way back whenever were backed by an asset, like the gold-based dollar. For example, you could turn in your dollars and, in theory, and get gold for them. And I think we did away with that. FDR started doing away with that at about the time the Great Depression hit. We were maybe a half a decade into the Great Depression. And then I think Richard Nixon kind of finalized it, saying, okay, it's done now. The dollar is not tied to anything. It's not tied to gold or anything. So we're off the gold standard as of 1971 or something. Mm-hmm. And what the U.S. dollar is a fiat currency, and it's valuable because the U.S. government says this is a store of value and it's valuable. They tell us it's valuable and it's valuable. And cryptocurrency is a little bit like that, because there's no asset behind cryptocurrency other than the security, the knowledge is secure or whatever. But the big difference between cryptocurrency, one big difference between cryptocurrency and a government-issued currency like the dollar or the yen or yuan or whatever, is that there's no government backing crypto. It's just a system, and that's it. And also it's transparent. You can actually see the transactions. The people that own Bitcoins, for example, and Bitcoin is the big dog, for cryptocurrency. They can see the transactions of people who have spent or bought things with cryptocurrency in the past. So that's a couple of the differences and the similarities between crypto and regular currency.
Now, Bitcoin is a brand of cryptocurrency? Is that a way to
Yes,
say
it
it?
is. It actually is, and probably nobody, including myself, had even heard of cryptocurrency before Bitcoin came along. And I think that the concepts that, well, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, there are a bunch of them. There's Bitcoin and Ethereum, BNB, Tether, and that laundry list could go on for like 20 or so.
All these people have done the advertising with us, and they talk about the mining of it.
Yeah, and well, before I get into the mining, I mean, the relative size of Bitcoin, I said they're the big dog. The Bitcoin, the value of all Bitcoin in the world today is worth right around $2.5 trillion, or $2,500 billion. And then the next biggest one is Ethereum. It's worth, a little over 500 billion, 540 billion. So it's like 20% the size. And if you add Ethereum up with all the rest of the other 19 of them, I'm not sure if they even add up to what Bitcoin's worth. So it is literally the big dog on the block for cryptocurrency. But anyway, cryptocurrencies, the concept for it is it relies on blockchains. And blockchains were conceived in a paper in 1991, but nobody really did anything with it for almost 20 years. And then Bitcoin came out in January 3rd, 2009 was when it was started by a fellow named Satoshi Nakamoto. And there's a finite number of Bitcoins in the world. There are like 20 million Bitcoins. So I don't know that anybody owns well, I guess people would own whole Bitcoins, but most of the people that invest, the rank and file like me, for example, they would own fractional shares of Bitcoins. One Bitcoin is worth about $120,000. And when in 2009, one Bitcoin was worth just a tiny fraction of 1 penny. In fact, there are a couple of, I'll skip ahead, but there are a couple of interesting transactions that went on. Let's see if I can find. I wrote this down in my notes because I'm not going to remember the names of these guys. Because,
I understand.
Well, one of them has to do with Bitcoin Pizza Day. This guy, he was a Bitcoin miner, Laszlo Hanysek, and he bought in, what's the date on it? I think it was like 2010 or so. I'm not sure the exact date. I should know that.
When you talk about mining, you brought it up again. What does mine? How do you mine Bitcoin?
Let's talk about Pizza Day first, because it's more fun.
Okay.
Because both you and I like pizza.
I love
pizza.
pizza.
The date. It's a famous date. If you own Bitcoin, it's a famous date. Bitcoin Pizza Day was May 22nd, 2010, and this guy Laszlo Hanysek bought 2 pizzas for $35. And back then, like I said, they were worth like a fraction of a penny. He spent 10,000 Bitcoin buying these. Today's value of those 10,000 Bitcoins is $1.2 billion.
He spent $1.2 billion on pizza?
On pizza, yeah, on pizza. Wow. But that's not the worst one. The worst one's, in doing the research, I ran across this guy, James Howells. He was a Welsh computer engineer, and he was one of the early Bitcoin miners. This is the segue into mining, which you're so interested in.
Okay.
He was one of the early Bitcoin miners, and he set up a computer in his apartment, and it was just churning away, solving these equations, validating these transactions, doing Bitcoin mining. And I think he actually had mined enough, or he had validated enough transactions where he had earned 8,000 Bitcoins. And he had these in his wallet on his computer, and then his girlfriend complained. It's always a woman, isn't it, Bob?
I'm not going there with that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding now. For the sake of marriage.
Yes.
Anyway, his girlfriend complains, like, this computer is running day and night, and I can hear it. It's making noise. This is just grating my nerves. Get rid of it. And so he pulls the plug. He stops it, and he gets busy on other projects. And pretty soon they're cleaning out the apartment. They have a little garage. And he throws a bunch of crap away. He ended up throwing the hard drive of that computer away with 8,000 Bitcoins on it. And also the value of that is almost $1 billion. And he couldn't recover it because when Bitcoin started going through the ceiling a few years later, it's like, crap, I got to find that hard drive. It's like, I think we threw it away back in 2013. And okay.
So it's just sitting in there.
It's in a landfill. It's in a landfill. He's a Welsh computer engineer. It's a landfill in Newport, Wales. There's a $1 billion hard drive.
So why aren't people going through that landfill to try to find it?
I'm pretty sure they are, and I think he did all kinds of stuff. He offered like half of the money or a third of the money to anybody that would recover this hard drive, and so
the rats in the landfill probably have something to do with it.
I don't know. It was probably crushed or something. Who knows?
Wow.
for whatever reason, it's lost. But some of those early transactions are kind of interesting.
So I guess he couldn't put it in a cloud or something? Or
Well,
can you not do that?
this is like 2012
this is
or
pre-cloud.
11 or something. Yeah, this is like he's one of the
okay.
early Bitcoin miners.
Okay.
So, but anyway, Bitcoin, like I said, it rests on blockchain. That's the technology that that fuels, or the engine that fuels Bitcoin. And blockchain it's a public distributed ledger. That means everybody can see, all the owners can see all the other transactions. And what they do is there are a bunch of Bitcoin transactions, and there are miners that are validating them. They have to perform all these proof of work calculations, and they have to solve these calculations. Well, first of all, let me back up a minute. The transactions go through, and they're put into a pool of unvalidated transactions, and then thousands or tens of thousands, or I don't know how many, maybe millions of all these miners throughout the world, they have access to these pools of unvalidated transactions. And they pick a transaction and they do the calculations, and then the winner is the one that comes up with the solution first to validate this transaction. And then the system gathers up bundles of all these newly validated transactions and forms them into a block. And then that is encrypted with a hash, which is like a digital fingerprint, and is it is cryptographically linked to the previous block, which is cryptographically linked to the previous block, and that's thus the blockchain.
Okay.
And all the people that own Bitcoin can see all the transactions. And I mentioned that because people, for some reason, Bitcoin has a reputation of being anonymous, money. You can spend it, nobody can tell, but that's not really true. In fact, the people have you ever heard of Silk Road, the dark net marketplace?
No.
In the early days I guess it would be the early days of crypto. And crypto is really what enabled this, but there's the dark web where people go to do nefarious things.
Yes.
And there's this site called Silk Road. And this guy was using crypto to be paid for transactions that were mostly it was for illegal drugs. People would log on and buy drugs, and they'd get them through the mail or get them through however. And also they were selling things like hacker tools and pretty much anything illegal that was going on there. Anyway, the authorities used Bitcoin to track down the addresses of the guy that was behind this, and they ended up arresting him and taking down Silk Road because wow. The thing is, anybody can see a transaction, but they don't see the name and address. They don't see, Scott Richardson, Quincy, Illinois, 330 East Avenue. They see my wallet address, or if I had it. Mm-hmm. But the authorities can actually, link the wallet addresses to the people. So it's absolutely not anonymous at all.
Yeah, I've had people offer me these trans, like when we do these posts, they'll like try to offer me and get me, and I'm like, no, I'm just not going to do that, because number one, the money's coming to the company, so I'm not going to like do that, and just send us your couple $100 through PayPal if you want us to post your thing. So we're not going to get into that with the company, because my partners and we just haven't gone down this road yet. So all right, so talk about mining now.
Well, we talked about mining a little bit. No. Mining are the people, the computer engineers, like the two fellows.
So that's the mining, when you've got the computer running the whole time.
They basically have computers that are solving these proof of work calculations they have to solve these complicated calculations, and that's about the depth of my knowledge. Like I said, this isn't even dinner party knowledge here.
Right.
To validate the transactions. And once they validate a transaction, then it's bundled in, and a bunch of them are bundled together and form blocks, which in turn are attached to other blocks to form a blockchain. But anyway, and they're all competing. All these miners are competing. So, and I don't know if I suspect that different miners are trying to solve the same transactions at the same time. So it's the ones with the best computing power that happen to, and also it involves, they have to guess at the solutions. They're not able, it's not like an equation that you would be able to solve.
Because these people who advertise this stuff with us, they're always talking about different brands of miners. And they're talking about how these miners do this and how these miners do that.
Really?
And how these miners are going to make you more money than some other miner will.
So hence the interest in miners. Huh?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
That's why I wanted to know. Because I've got all these different kinds of people who say they are miners and say they are making money mining. Why don't you probably contribute to me and I'll share the wealth? It just seems really, really sketchy.
Well, also, the thing is, anytime you hear of an investment like that, it's like, well, why don't you just reinvest your own money if you're making that much money?
Yeah.
It's like the late night shows that you see, like, oh, earn all this money by becoming a real estate flipper or something. It's like, really? I mean, if it was that valuable, why don't you just do a little more of it? And why are you on the late night?
Yeah, I get that.
That's been going on since the beginning of time, though.
Yes, and again,
snake oil salesman. I mean, guys in covered wagons driving around.
Yes,
so.
P.T. Barnum, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, this also there's got to be, again, I see it. It just seems like kind of a get rich quick thing, but there's got to be so many drawbacks to it, I would imagine.
There are a lot of drawbacks, and it's not really so much a get rich quick thing, because the thing is, first of all, nobody believed in it at first, and then it became popularized, and then actually Silk Road and nefarious activities kind of popularized it to a great extent. But then it just really took off in the 2010s. I mean, if you would have been investing in this in, say, 2013, 14, 15, even like 2016 or 17, you would have made tons of money on this, because it really, if you look at the amount that it went up, there's a steep ascent of value. And even now, it's so volatile that I think if you really paid attention to it, you probably could still make a ton of money, because there's always money to be made in volatility. There's money to be made, money to be lost. So.
Well, again, though, if you say you get to this point where you earn, say you end up with, say I've got 4 Bitcoin or whatever, so that'd be what, 120,
600,000, 500,000.
Okay, so would I then sell that to somebody? And say, hey, buy my Bitcoin.
You
buy this off me.
You could use that to buy something, or you could cash out. Yeah, sure.
So, but is a bank going to take that as collateral?
Well, a bank might not. I don't know.
Because it seems like the bankers are kind of like,
Some banks might. There are banks that are formed to handle Bitcoin. And also, the danger is there are not a lot, but there have been some companies formed that you would pay your hard-earned dollars and buy a certain number of Bitcoins or a fractional share of Bitcoins or whatever, and then they'd send you a report, you were making money, and it was all a Ponzi scheme. It's like they didn't sell jack. All they did was like generate paperwork saying you own this, and then all of a sudden you go to their offices and they're just, it's a ghost town,
And I know, from what I understand, this takes a lot of energy to do, right? A lot of juice, a lot of power.
You're absolutely right. That's one of the big drawbacks. Is I was looking at the comparative amount of energy, and Bitcoin worldwide uses about 650 trillion BTUs per year, which that figure means nothing to me. That's about the same amount of energy that's used by the country of Thailand. Yeah. So, it's all the Bitcoin miners. It's your buddies that are trying to advertise on Muddy River.
And they're all doing it like on some other side of the world. But you look at it, and with everything we're talking about, we've talked to the folks from a lot of people with Ameren and Hannibal Border Public Works and ComEd. You read all this stuff about how energy rates are going up, and this has to kind of.
Oh, it has to affect it. Anything that uses energy, absolutely, sure. Yeah. And another threat is quantum computing, a topic we talked about a couple of weeks ago, because the thing is, quantum computing could actually solve and break some of the crypto encoding, and the people that create quantum computing and the legitimate users, it's not going to pose a threat, but there are nefarious users too that they could be stealing vast amounts of money by using quantum computing. The thing is, quantum computing is not there. This is like the technology of the future, and I don't know, maybe it always will be. But they say that within 20 years or 50 years or whatever, that they'll be able to solve all these things with quantum computing. And of course, there's fraud and
like you said, I had somebody who said they were cheated. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry, but I didn't tell you to buy it.
And they probably weren't dealing. Well, obviously, they weren't dealing with the legitimate, firm that was selling Bitcoins. They were dealing with people who just defrauded them and just told them. Because how would you know? How would you know if you wrote a check to somebody that, do I really own Bitcoin, or did this guy just take my check and bail out?
Right. Yeah.
And then the last threat that the founders. Well, I should talk about the founder of Bitcoin, that Japanese fellow. But anyway, the last threat to the system of Bitcoin is a regulatory threat, because governments like the United States government and our monetary system, we see that as a threat to our monetary system. And when I say we, I mean the U.S. government.
Well, yeah. Again, I think that's why the bankers that have reached out to me about this are like, whoa. I'm like, well, I'm sponsored content, and you can advertise too, and they do. But we want to label it and clearly make sure it's that way. But again, the guy that founded it still alive?
That's not known. He's a very mysterious fellow. isn't publicly available. Nobody knows where he is. And also, I said early on that there are like 20, I can't remember if I said it here, but there are 21 million Bitcoins worldwide.
Yes.
And that's a finite amount. There won't be any more than that. He owns 1 million of them in his Bitcoin wallet, and they're not in circulation. So in theory, I mean, he could be the wealthiest man in the world if he decided to, slowly, get rid of these. And also, one of the threats or drawbacks to Bitcoin are whales, and whales are companies or individuals that own a lot of Bitcoin currency, and they can move entire markets. They can. It's just like the stock market. They can manipulate things, make volatility, and then they can actually make money off of that.
Yeah.
Well, he would obviously be the biggest whale of all.
Yeah.
He could probably swallow up all the other whales himself.
Yeah, we've heard of that in guys who try to manipulate the stock market and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's so is there an active? There's no way to trade it. There's no public. It's not publicly traded, I assume.
Well, there are all kinds of publicly traded companies that own cryptocurrencies.
But is Bitcoin itself publicly traded or no?
Well, what do you mean by? You mean is it on the stock exchange, or do you mean? I think Bitcoin is on the stock. I'm not positive about that. I think it is. I may be wrong about that.
Well, I don't. I mean, why would that mean? It's like, okay, the dollar's not on the stock exchange. I mean, if it's a form of currency, why would it be? I guess, but it's a brand.
I mean, comparing Bitcoin is the company.
Okay, I guess that's right. Yes, because crypto is the currency.
Yeah. Well, crypto is the type of currency.
Right.
And then Bitcoin is a company that produces Bitcoins.
Okay.
So
yes. But then they're not going to make any more, like you said. But so they probably are traded, I would imagine, because again, there's got to be some sort of regulation on this.
I mean, as you dig into it, there is a regulatory aspect of Bitcoin, but it's not centralized. It's regulatory in that they set up the parameters and the systems, and anybody can become a Bitcoin owner, and in doing so, then they're the ones that are they're participating in the validation of transactions. In other words, the company isn't doing it. The company is just setting the guidelines for the users to do it.
Right. Anything else on this discussion?
Well, we've covered this deep enough, and that's the extent of my knowledge. I had to rely heavily on my notes here.
That's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
It's really a fascinating topic, and it shows a lot of promise. And you kind of have to wonder, I mean, all these technologies that we talk about, you hear all these end-of-the-world scenarios, and people are all up in arms worried about this one. Who knows what's going to happen, Bob? I mean, you can't, you can kind of tell the future, say, a few months out or a year out, but 5 years out, you have no idea.
I think land, I always land is probably still the best investment.
Yeah, yeah. Dirt doesn't go away.
Dirt's always there. So, well, I appreciate it, Scott. Thank you very much for stopping by again.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for watching this episode of High Tech in the Heartland.